In the Newsroom is a production in partnership with Studio Stillwater. Every week, journalists from the Stillwater News Press invite listeners to join us in the newsroom and hear the story behind the stories. Hello and welcome to In the Newsroom. I'm editor Beau Simmons. With me today, producer Chris Peters.
Howdy, folks.
City editor Michelle Charles.
Hello.
Reporter Ashlyn Huffman.
Hello.
So it's April. We got jonquils, Bradford pears. We're all a little miserable.
Just a little miserable.
Yeah.
And now, Ashlyn, you think some people think we made a joke about bird flu?
Yeah.
Because it was April. We had a April 1st edition, even though that story, I guess, sort of, it was written yesterday. It came out April 1st. And now people don't know the difference. And that's one of the issues with social media, right?
It is.
Because every other thing you scroll on is some kind of joke.
My favorite meme for this day is OSU professor shared this, that the only day that people actually check the sources on the internet.
That is actually true.
So on my Facebook feed, I get the bicycle industry.
Yeah.
It really loves the fake products on April Fools.
Okay.
So here's this tire that will change the tread as you ride to the right surface and
Honestly,
all these
why
ridiculous
is that something
jokes.
I would low-key believe? Oh, that's kind of cool. Try to buy it. April Fool's gets me all the time.
I don't know. But no, there was an actual duck in Payne County found with avian flu.
A wild duck. Okay. And the thing is, I wrote this story. It was kind of a rewrite of a zhuzhed up rewrite of a release from the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture or Food and Forestry. I'm putting the whole name in there.
Yeah,
all those things.
Food and forestry.
Agriculture, food, and forestry. It covers a lot of ground. Anyway, yes. So they have an animal and plant health unit that monitors diseases. Okay. And I mean, they put this release out because this is a big deal. Avian flu, there's a new strain of it that's going through the country. There's a lot of it in the eastern part of the U.S. Wild birds carry it into your area as they migrate. The peak season is October through April, I learned last night as I was doing my research on this. And, and they can infect domestic poultry, which can have a huge impact on commercial poultry operations. Again, doing more research, I found that Forbes magazine did a whole article in 2021 on the economic impact of avian flu worldwide. And there were 40 countries that had outbreaks. Millions of birds had to be killed. It affected the cost of chicken and eggs.
Wow.
In the grocery store. So this is a big deal. So the fact that it's been found in Payne County, they just want everybody to be really careful. And they're referring, hunters to, there's a biosecurity guide for hunters who are dealing with wild birds. Mm-hmm. And then there are, there's information where you can track, whether it's been found in wild birds, whether it's been found in domesticated birds in your county, in your state. And anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of information there, and it's all from very official sources. I pulled from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the USDA, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture.
This is what Michelle does for the community. She goes to all these really boring places and pulls all these facts together. Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't have to.
Mm-hmm. And then learn that, okay, we are not at risk of catching the bird flu and getting sick.
This particular strain doesn't seem to be as infectious for humans, but it doesn't mean you couldn't get it and maybe get a little sick. I mean, a lot of these strains will make the jump from species to species.
What about my backyard chickens?
Well, yes, possibly. Possibly you got to keep an eye on them. If you have a chicken basically that gets sick or dies suddenly, you should report it to the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture. There's actually a link in my story that talks about, that where you can go. What really surprised me about this, first of all, was how widespread it already is and how many species of wild birds can get this. It's been found in pelicans. It's been found in vultures. It's been found in a bald eagle. It's been found in almost every kind of duck and almost every kind of goose. And, some teals, which are kind of like little ducks. I mean, so there's if you're dealing with any kind of a wild bird that seems sick or that you find dead, they need to know about that. So anyway, yeah, no, it was not a joke. It's
Not a
actually
joke.
deadly serious, especially if you have chickens and you make your living from them.
And it would have been the first reported case in Oklahoma this year.
Yes,
Which is why it was sort of broadcast the way it was.
exactly.
So we just got lucky and had like a wild bird come here, poop, another bird ate the poop or something, somehow transmitted between
Yeah, I don't know how
bird to duck.
It's just a virus. I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows how those birds mingle?
We don't know. We don't know. A goose coughed on a duck. We don't know. We don't know. But we do know that it can spread. So, yeah, biosecurity, name of the game. And that's a big deal. That's one of the big things with the pandemic center here in, right here in Stillwater. It's supposed to be dealing with both veterinary and human diseases because, the animal diseases, they can have a huge impact on our economy because of the impact on agriculture. Anyway, so yeah, not an April Fool's joke, guys. We don't do that.
No, it's. I mean, I actually think it's corporate policy, but I just know since I've been here, I've worked at 4 newspapers, and I remember maybe one guy would do it in a column at one of the papers I worked, but never anything on a front page because we deal in trust and
exactly
it's sort of our trade.
Right, and it's not like we ain't got jokes.
Yeah, are we a silly newspaper, Ashland?
We're not a silly newspaper.
Well, not when we go into print. If you were to hang out in the newsroom for a while, we can get pretty silly in there.
We're the funniest people in Stillwater. Y'all do not even know.
I mean, if we could write like The Onion for Stillwater, it'd be brilliant. But
right.
But then who's gonna do the news?
Exactly.
All right. What else? Today, maybe, or sometime with the release, we still have an election day, which around most of the state, it would be like city council runoff and school board and things like that, but we don't have those. We have one bond election, $9 million for relocating the firehouse.
Yes. It's a project they've been trying to get done for a long time. There was another bond issue that went to the voters in 2013. We've talked about this before. We talked about it in the Grassroots podcast. Mm-hmm. That particular bond issue did not do well. It was packaged with a lot of recreational stuff. I went back and looked at some stories on it, and I had forgotten about all the amphitheater they wanted to put at Boomer Lake. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to do like a boardwalk there and everything. So there was a lot of commercial development at Boomer Lake, plus there was like a big sports complex. Anyway, voters were generally feeling negative about the whole thing. But in 2013, the fire station was bundled with buying 25 police cars and improving the city's emergency radio system, which they're already doing now. So we're not doing any of that in this bond issue. It's just the fire station, but now the price has gone up to $9 million. Construction costs are up. And also, I think the plans have changed a little bit. They're looking at building a facility that they can grow into and where hopefully they have the space to add on and to do. And they're not talking about adding on already, but the space where they can adapt to whatever future demands there are. Mm-hmm. So that's what they're looking at right now.
I think the interesting thing this time is that they really put forth a more of a marketing plan, and you've got, Chief Civic Innovation Officer Becky Taylor,
yes.
And the fire chief going around to all the civic groups and basically anybody that wants to talk about the fire station, they want to talk about. Now, back in 2013, I do remember that bond vote, and I do remember how I felt on a lot of those items.
Right.
But I don't remember, and I wasn't as involved with things or honestly paying attention as much back then. But it seems they've put forth an extra effort there and maybe a little bit more of a strategy. I remember Mayor Bartley talking about this.
Right.
And it wasn't so much that all the things that were on the bond were necessarily like bad ideas or anything.
Right.
It was they didn't really know how to sell them to the public.
Well, and also, I mean, they've really made an effort to isolate this one because they want people to just be focused on this one. Because I think the theory is, anyway, it seems to be, that if there's something else on the ballot that you might not feel so positive about, that those negative feelings can wash over to the thing that you might be more willing to support. The public safety aspect of the public safety bond came the closest to passing in 2013.
Well, I mean, especially considering that they removed animal welfare from this effort, right?
Which makes me sad, actually.
Yeah.
Me too.
I mean, I would have passed a $13 million bond to do both a fire station and animal welfare.
I'm not a property owner. I don't pay property taxes, so I
Right.
can't say. But Michelle, you as a property owner, you were like, okay, the extra $50 a year.
I'm
Worth
okay
it.
with that. If the dogs are taken care of and we've got,
Yeah.
I know people who are grumbling about, oh, now they're worried about the condition of Fire Station 2 because it's been in, kind of rough shape for a while. They've known that there are issues. One of the things that they bring up, and that I've talked to people who've lived in the fire station, is that they had to put in a water filtration system because their pipes were so gross and the water was so gross. And basically what would happen is, it filters a lot of stuff out of that water. And so the way you would know that the filters were plugged up and that they needed to be changed was all of a sudden you couldn't flush the toilet or take a shower.
And there's
so then
only
you-
one shower in the place.
Exactly. So then you'd have to go upstairs and change out 5 different filters or something. And then, all of a sudden you had running water again. The city's supplying drinking water because they don't want people to drink the water that comes out of the faucet.
That
They
is
can use it for
so
bathing and stuff.
gross.
The last time the city of Stillwater passed a bond, that was
99 when they...
1999.
That's right. We're going to party.
I think we should put that song in over you.
I love Prince.
It wasn't good enough.
No. Let him
You're
do
no
it.
Prince. I mean, but who is?
Prince likes to ride bikes too.
Yeah, there you go.
Fun fact.
Supposedly the last photo of him in existence is him riding a bike.
And I bet he was wearing heels when he did it. But
I don't
anyway, so yeah, the fire station. They basically remodeled City Hall, built a new police department in 99. Those bonds, I think, if they're not paid off, they're just about paid off. That's part of the planning for this.
Actually, I believe they are because I remember at part of the presentation they gave at Rotary was
there
that
you
they
go,
were
then.
that they
There
were
you go.
done.
So yes, on Tuesday there is a vote. Early voting's already going on. We're recording this on Friday afternoon, and I get the feeling it's probably going to pass, but we'll see. I mean, the main objections I'm hearing right now from people aren't necessarily to building a new fire station. It's maybe to putting it back on land owned by OSU. They don't feel great about the city spending $9 million to build a building on land that it doesn't own.
Yeah, you never know. You never know who you've motivated to get to the polls.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon for people on tax issues to show up just to vote no.
That is true.
And it's not uncommon to get your people mobilized to go vote when it's
Right.
a single issue. So, yeah,
Right.
who knows?
I mean, the issue I would say, though, is that there is about 14 years left on the 100-year lease that the city has on the current fire station. Sometime in the next 14 years, they've got to figure something out if this one doesn't pass, because OSU is not going to renew that lease. They want that building. They've wanted that building for years, have been trying to get the city to get out of that building because it has plans. The university has plans for that building. It's right there on the corner.
Time is ticking away.
Exactly. So they're going to have to come up with another solution if this one doesn't pass. So it'll be revisited very quickly if this isn't successful.
All right. So we spoke earlier of trust in our responsibilities. I've been sort of reminiscing about my earlier career.
Are you waxing nostalgic?
I get this call. I think I'm in Pryor, Oklahoma, and these folks tell me they're going to be protesting at the courthouse. Their goal is to raise awareness for the legalization of marijuana. So this is all the way back in the early aughts and before any of the real momentum, for medical cannabis, any of that was going on. Just a group of people. We're gonna march on the courthouse, and so I'm like, sure, yeah, I go get that. It's one of those things where you're always looking for a story. I go out there
Oh gosh.
to see this rally, and I'm not even kidding you. I think it's 6 or 7 people who are just walking a line in a circle around the courthouse with their signs. And there was a woman from the ACLU that I talked to, and I talked to everyone there. And it sort of struck me as I came back that, would this even be an issue if I wasn't here to tell this story? I have essentially created this rally for them by giving them this coverage. Otherwise, they're just 6 people walking around a courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really become,
News
unless I go cover it.
Right. If a
'Cause
tree
then-
falls in the forest
Right.
and there's not a
Yeah.
reporter there to
Yeah.
document it.
Or you become
gonna
the
know?
the amplifier, the megaphone that
Yeah,
takes the quieter voice and amplifies it.
All that to say this, we had an issue here starting about a month ago now, right?
Yes.
Where-
it feels like
Yeah.
longer.
Where at least one or more parents were kind of trying to, I don't know, they wanted us to jump on a story, to create a story for them about an issue with a transgender student using the facilities. And Michelle can even say, even before that, the issue was
Yes.
almost just that a transgender person existed, right?
Yes.
And they were wanting, I guess, the school to react to that. They were wanting us to react just to sort of create a little noise. And learning my lessons from so long ago, I was not going to create a news story out of thin air, right?
Right.
So I think we go from that to a week. They gather in front of a school board to use the public comment section to bring this up. It's about 2 or 3 parents, 2 or 3 pastors from different places. And then the issue became about, does the school board not have a policy for transgender girls and their bathroom usage? Now, the school board is not allowed to respond during this public.
That was not
comment
on the
hearing.
agenda.
Yeah. So that you don't get a back and forth. So you just get what these people are saying. And again, I chose not to write anything because, well, actually, I covered that, took all the notes, watched this meeting. I don't know what was going on else that day.
Michelle
that we
was
had to
out,
do.
and we were
So,
we
okay.
were watching it, or Michelle was covering
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah, there
at
was
the same time.
there was something else I went to.
Yeah. I sent the interim superintendent, Gay Washington, just a little Q&A because, like I said, there was no response. All you had was this one side saying this was a thing. I wrote to her, I said, I should preface this by saying I'm not entirely sure the issue merits a story, especially if this is mostly an external influence. We always try to measure the public good, and if publicity would potentially harm a child or lead to increased harassment, we need to steer clear of that. So that's the other part of that. It's like,
Amen.
yeah, the news, you judge your newsworthiness based on, I think number one is just, would people read this?
Right.
Or
Right.
do people need to read it?
Is it important?
And then, and then we weigh public harm versus public good. And this is sort of the case where I would hope people still think upon those lines where it's like, what if merely doing this, amplifying it, giving it oxygen, leads to a child getting hurt. I couldn't live with myself.
No.
I'd be gone the next day. If something happened because of a story like that, I don't know. Maybe I'd be in the wrong business, right? So
You'd be questioning
yeah,
some ethics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You'd finally go by that fishing charter.
And so I just, I shot her a Q&A, and she writes back, and there's still, everyone's sort of hedging a little bit because you don't know the legality of certain things. And I think, her main point was this was never brought to them as there being any incidents created. No students have ever contacted their teachers. No teachers contacted their principals. No principals ever brought it to the administration meetings.
So nobody within the school is actually that concerned about this.
No one
that she can tell.
Or I don't know the level of concern within the school. I mean, who's to say what's on the minds of different teachers?
But not concerned enough to take official action.
But
approach anybody about it.
There just wasn't any incident that sparked this issue. Right? So that led me to at least still not doing anything, because I just figured that, what good could come of this if you're just giving someone a megaphone, to sort of create an issue out of thin air.
And if you write stories just about people being disgruntled or angered for whatever, there's a million of them out there, but they're not news.
Well, and I saw one of the TV stations in Oklahoma City, there's a reporter standing outside the administration building in the dark, and she's saying, parents in Stillwater are concerned about, and it's like, okay, that's the story. That's the end of it. We've got a small handful of parents who are concerned. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't be concerned about their children and about things that affect their children. I mean, my gosh, all I've ever done in my entire adult life is parent. I know what it's like to be concerned about your kids. Trust me. But having said all that, and I have so many thoughts about this issue, Beau. Are you ready to let me loose? Because I've been living with this for a while.
You're the only mother at the table.
Well, not just that, but I've been. You're just a favorite.
Your
aunt.
dog. Sorry,
you're a favorite. Aunt.
She's talking about her dog.
Yeah.
She was talking about
Jack
her
Frost.
dog.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, when Jack Frost has a problem, we'll talk.
Man, he got so many problems. I'm done with him.
I know, but anyway, so no, this has been building for a while, and from what I can tell, this is kind of like This seems to be sort of like the latest boogeyman for some people. Okay? People are very, very concerned about this. I see some of my friends on Facebook, different social media platforms, sharing a lot of pictures of like a transgender swimmer. This seems to be...
Leah Thomas, I think, Penn University.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we are... it seems to be becoming sort of the cause of the moment.
Called célèbre.
Thank you. I didn't want to try to do. I wasn't going to try to do the French. So
it's definitely like a national conversation,
right?
Where for some people, it probably started on that national level. They saw the large broadcast news cover that this transgender person won a swimming race,
right?
And so there seems to be kind of that trickle down, but it has all the way for us gone local.
Oh, well, and beyond that, what this is like now this is becoming something that is, going local. And it's everything from, we're having bills going through the legislature where, they want you to, they want school librarians to be forced to give parents a list of every book their kid has checked out. I guess in case their kid might be gay or transgender or trying to read about it. You've got, I went to an education forum that was sponsored by our local Republican Party, and they had, different they had a candidate for state superintendent of education, and another woman whose name escapes me at the moment, who'd been involved in a big statewide educational association. And some of these types of issues came up in the Q&A. And then the minister at the church where this was hosted basically said that he was going to be showing a documentary to his congregation. And it was basically about how...
Did you put documentary in quotes in your mind just now?
Yes,
okay.
I did. I was doing air quotes.
Okay.
It's a journalism thing.
Yes, because he showed a snippet of the documentary. And it was a lot of adults sitting there looking very, very concerned about how comprehensive sexual education was indoctrinating children to become sexually active more often or to question their sexuality and or gender and making that okay. But the And there was footage, like actual, video footage of the parents. But then every piece of footage that was supposed to demonstrate this impact it was having on the kids was a really weird cartoon. Like, they didn't have any actual footage of kids who had been impacted by this. There was a cartoon I remember it was a boy, and he was looking in the mirror, and he was putting on purple eyeshadow and lipstick, and then looking at himself in the mirror and admiring how pretty he was or something. And it was a cartoon, a very badly done cartoon. But, I mean, I guess my whole point is this has been simmering for a while, and it's been spreading. And it's spreading in a variety of ways, in a variety of populations. And so I have people who reach out to me directly. I mean, we've talked about, when people aren't very nice or whatever. I mean, like when the whole Will Smith thing, happened at the Oscars.
Oh, yeah.
I was on the radio and I was talking to the DJ about it. And he said something about, my husband or whatever. I said, look, if my husband smacked everybody who said something mean about me or, whatever, we'd be in court all the time. And he goes, yeah, the media. And I'm like, no, me personally.
Yeah.
I have people literally messaging me and saying really mean things sometimes. So I've had people reaching out to me for a while, basically implying that I wasn't doing my job because I wouldn't dig into this and ferret out information about whether there was actually a child who is transgender in Stillwater Public Schools and what the schools were doing about bathroom policies. I've been accused of actually not doing my job. And it was someone who didn't really have any sources. I told them I would love to talk to some people who are actually impacted by this. Send them my way if you know. And the guy basically said, I'm your source.
Sure.
And wanted me to just take off and do this for
that's
him.
kind of another part of it, because you talked about the cartoonification and,
yes.
This Leah Thomas is a public figure. Governor Stitt is a public figure. This child in Stillwater schools is not a public figure.
Mm-hmm.
And in a story like this, the child would not have any agency within this story, but rather be sort of a, subject of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And how that's just not, to me, good journalism. It's not fair journalism.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And actually, I think we need to make the point that we wouldn't even be talking about this today, except that this has been going on long enough. It's been discussed at the school board, and there's been enough going on that now the superintendent has felt obligated to issue a statement to parents in the district.
That
is the only reason we're talking about this today.
This discussion, yeah.
I'll be honest. I haven't read the entire statement. It was very long. It seemed very detailed. And so it was, from my impression, just the reading the beginning of it is that the superintendent was taking it very, very seriously and wanted to really give a very, in-depth comments and report on it.
And that's part of the other issue of this. I mentioned early on people hedging because they don't totally understand the legality. They're having to consult with attorneys, and that's probably another thing that took a long time to get a statement like this out. Your schools, your public schools, are de facto government agencies.
Yes.
They're federally and state funded. They have to abide by all these federal guidelines and laws, and when people went to that school board, they were essentially asking for a rule or a policy that would treat this person differently than other students.
Correct.
So you're already starting to look at the legal issues that surround that, and I think that's a lot of what this latest email comes up with. Basically, the school did have an existing policy not related to bathrooms, other than to say that there are bathrooms at each site that could be used as private bathrooms by just about anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But they list gender identity as sort of a protected class. As someone or kids who they would not discriminate
as part of
based,
Title IX?
or not Title IX,
Just
in their policy.
Oh, okay.
So now they're citing Title IX to say that one of the reasons they could not sort of create policy based on gender identity, to them that would be possible discrimination. So I think that's.
Right.
I don't know if it
that's
would even be
latest.
possible. I would feel like it is 100% discrimination if you do something like that. Would it not be 100% discrimination if you create a policy just to stop one person from using a bathroom?
Not a lawyer.
I don't
So
know.
no, that's the kind of thing that it's the kind of thing that needs to be worked out in courts.
No, it does.
Yeah.
Well, what's it called? Save Women's Sports Act that the governor
Right.
signs, banning transgender girls and women from female sports. Where we expect that to go through the courts.
It could
right?
be, that could be challenged as soon as that issue pops up. I mean, right now, I think when this was all shaking down, the OSSAA had already established their guidelines, and there were almost no reports, K through 12, of a trans girl trying to play female sports.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's, who knows how
But
that
now
works
all
out. Yeah.
parents are going to have to sign an affidavit declaring their child's biological sex to play sports. That was part of the law.
I believe that's part of the law, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
to me, as like, okay, your parent, maybe you care, maybe you don't care. You're suddenly now going to have this thing that you're going to sign that says, yes, my child is this. And I almost wonder for some of these people if that's more important to make parents like confirm, not to be used later on, but to have their parents tell their kids, you are this.
Okay, there was at this forum that I went to, and I did the air quotes thing again, but it was, it was a program. Toward the end of the night, there was an exchange that really, really bothered me. And I understand that there are people there's so much in this world that some people do not feel comfortable with. And I get it. It feels like society is changing. Everything's fluid, from your kid's gender to their sexuality to our society to how you work. I mean, everything is in flux, right? And it can be really overwhelming, especially if you're someone who really likes things, very black and white, or, you feel like there's a certain way that this world needs to be, and that's how you've lived. And I get that. I do. I truly can understand that. Anyway, having said all that, this lady who had been involved with the Education Association was talking about, she'd kind of gotten on a roll about, and this was about like banning books or something. I had to step out because I had a coughing fit, and you can't cough in public anymore since COVID. So I had to step away and get some water, and I came back in, and she was telling this story where apparently a friend of hers is a public school teacher. Teaches, I think, 7th or 8th grade. And she said that this young girl, like after they'd done a reading in class, had come up to her and told the teacher that she preferred to use they, them pronouns. And the woman apparently basically just turned on her and said, no, that is ridiculous. That doesn't even make any sense. It's not logical. They, them are plural pronouns. You're a singular person. Your name is, and then they use like Brittany or some kind of, just a standard girl name, right? We're just going to say Brittany. I don't think that was actually her name. You are a singular person named Brittany. You are a girl. That is what your mother named you, and that is what I'm going to call you. Now, can you imagine being 13 years old and you finally, for whatever reason, feel either empowered enough because of something you've read, or because you feel like you have a relationship with this teacher, or driven to make this statement? You approach an adult that you apparently trust, and they say that to you. That's how they come at you.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what that kid felt like?
See, that's the whole
That kid's
going to
be in therapy for the rest of her life over that.
We have essentially adults bullying children, and if you think that this is going to stop them from wanting to identify in any way they have, like, what is...
It's just traumatizing them. It's not fixing whatever you think their problem is. It's traumatizing children.
And we've sort of latched on.
And she
this.
sounded proud of her friend. She sounded like her friend was really standing up for what was right. That was what really troubled me, because all I could think about was this kid who probably will never recover from that. That'll be something she'll remember the rest of her life.
Well, and there's something that
or they will remember the rest of their lives.
When we had the voucher,
I just misgendered.
When we had the voucher debate, there was a whole lot of parents know best they know what's best for their children sort of debates. And I got to say, that's not always true. There's a lot of abuse out there. So, and there's a lot of laws, regarding this stuff that is essentially would require teachers to out their kids to parents.
Right.
You know, require people to turn over the books that their kids are reading to parents, you know, and it's like, we don't know. They're coming from the best situation.
Right.
Schools are usually a place where, I mean, Ashlyn, you've looked into this. A lot of when you have abuse or neglect, who usually finds out about it?
Usually schools.
That's right.
They're the
School
first place.
teachers.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't grow up in like an abusive place, but my parents were very religious. And when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to read certain books or do certain things. And as I've grown into an adult, they've actually changed and they have apologized. Like, you know, there's no reason you shouldn't have been able to read Harry Potter. And I know that's like different, but I feel like school is a place you're supposed to learn, grow yourself, and mature into an adult. And if we have kids that are trying to identify however they choose, told that they can't, what do you think is going to happen when they leave at 18, 17, 18, 19? When they graduate, you're going to not, the problem that parents don't understand, I know I'm not a parent, so it
Get
doesn't
on
matter.
that soapbox, Ashley.
But you are going to ruin your relationship with your kid if you try to control them their entire childhood. When as soon as they get older, they are going to leave and never look back. And I promise you, that is speaking from experience. Once you treat your kid like that, like they are nothing, you will never repair that relationship.
Yeah, I grew up in a similar type of household, a very evangelical. The book I read the most was the Bible. And I remember my very first book was that kid's Bible with, you know, the white Jesus.
White Jesus.
And, you know, all pastel colors and, you know, a very simplified one. And, you know, showing books of like, oh, where was it? Like the Daniel and the Lion's Den, you know, it's all very.
Coat of many colors.
Yeah. It's all very, I would call it now like Disney-ified Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But like my daughter, who's getting ready to be a teenager, she's got a pansexual flag hanging up in her room. As a kid, if you would have told me what's a pansexual, what is that? I didn't know. I wouldn't have been able to tell you what that was probably 10 years ago.
Exactly. Zoe, my youngest, when she was in junior high, I mean, she came to me one day. She was talking about some of her friends, and I'm like, "Oh, so your friend is gay?" And she's like, "Oh yeah." And then this friend is, you know, asexual, and this person, you know, and there were like all these categories I had never heard of that I had never, you know. And it's like kids are thinking about this stuff earlier. And one of the points I would like to make, like when people are concerned about, like, say, the library books their kids are reading, or they're concerned about their kids having access to information about this stuff, maybe it's not even about them. Maybe they've got a close friend and they're trying to figure it out and trying to understand.
Just learn.
You know, there's that. And then also there is this attempt to sort of tie it to this idea that comprehensive sexual education is leading to this. And I will tell you, in Oklahoma, that ain't a thing, folks. It's not happening. I asked my daughter, I said, "What did you learn in school?" She said, "They taught me about my menstrual cycle and they told me not to do it." Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, fifth grade. Fifth grade is when they teach you about all that
sort
stuff.
of a breakout of biology class.
Yeah.
essentially,
Which is the thing is like I don't know, the focus on such a small group of people in this state when there's like teen pregnancy rates and things that actually change people's lives because they're not educated on their options.
Right.
And that hurts society as a whole more than, you know, how somebody wants to identify, how somebody wants to love another person.
In high school, I actually was in PSI, which is postponing sexual involvement, and you would teach the underclassmen about all that stuff. And never once did we ever talk about sexual identity or gender identity or anything like that.
Wait, like seniors taught the freshmen this?
I had to teach my little brothers about STDs.
Did you have a purity? Did you wear a purity ring?
Man, you know I did.
Okay. All right.
I just missed the whole purity ring thing. I think I was a little bit too old for that trend.
When I turned 16,
but there were
purity.
There were plenty of promises. You signed a piece of paper, you know, at youth group that swearing abstinence.
But I mean, I think all of this really goes back to, this is why, I mean, I think this issue is a little bit of a boogeyman, right? Because it's something that gets people going. It gets them really nervous, and they worry about their kids, and they worry about all these things. And, you know, a lot of the factors that they think are creating this aren't even really happening in Oklahoma. And I feel like there are other problems that are very, very serious that demonstrably need to be addressed. They're happening in greater numbers anyway.
And also, I mean, yeah, if we have religious freedom here too, and you can raise your kids how you're going to raise them.
No, absolutely.
But can you get someone to legislate sin
for everyone else?
Can you get someone to legislate based on your personal beliefs, and make these policies and guidelines?
That doesn't seem very freedom of religion-like.
Well, and it goes back to education as well, right? Because, I mean, one of these parents finally was able to get someone to write about his concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a conservative think tank that then basically took his concerns and used them as an example of why education vouchers should be approved and why they should be able to take your tax dollars away from your public schools and use them to pay private school tuition or use them to cover, other educational expenses. So, I mean, even this think tank kind of had a agenda, and this is an example of why they say people need to be able to pull their kids out of school and do this.
Which they already can do.
Right. Education wars. I mean, it's tough. Public education, you've got to educate everybody. And how do you make sure you're doing right by everyone?
And sometimes chaos is the point, and sometimes cruelty is the point. I just, if we could all sort of focus on the reduction of harm, that would be a nice goal to have.
I would like to insert a little disclaimer for, look up the statistics for suicide rate between transgender children, and it will change your process on how hateful and how rude people are being towards these children. Everyone should be able to identify however they want. It is not my business how someone else wants to identify. You can't catch a sexual gender identity crisis from another kid. I'm sorry, but it gets me so upset because everyone is just so stupid.
Well, and I would say, okay. Well, I would say too, I mean, Chris and I were talking about this in terms of like bathroom issues, okay, say for kids in school. We both, have daughters who have gone through Stillwater Public Schools. I don't think either one of mine would, one of the things that we've heard is that, there are some girls who don't want to drink, aren't drinking water because they don't want to have to use the bathroom at school. Guess what? My daughter would dehydrate herself all day to avoid using the restroom at school because she hated to use a public restroom. Chris has asked his daughter if there are things going on. She avoids the restroom at school.
She does.
This is a developmental thing. It's a social thing. This isn't even about any kind of gender identity issue.
I also did this.
Yeah,
That's
her
standard.
concerns were twofold. She says she's drinking plenty of water. She just happens to not need to go. But she actively avoids it because she's like, ew, gross. But the number one was there's drama and fights and stuff that happen in the bathrooms.
There you go. So there are so many issues. It's not a simple black and white thing. And we're dealing with children. We're dealing with children, and we have adults who it seems like are going after children, and that's not
And I think one
kind.
example, if you go back and watch that school board meeting, Loudoun County, like everyone points to this Loudoun County incident as
right.
If you even do more than a surface level dig at that thing, you'll find out it is not the talking point people think it is. They're saying that, I guess, a boy dressed as a girl to attack other girls in the restroom, and it wasn't even remotely.
No, that is not the situation.
Like, one of the things that, Michelle, you were being asked to do is investigate.
Yes, to
And
dig into it.
And
to
there's this
basically
whole
turn it
thing
into
of
a
like,
story.
we're all like investigators, and we, we'll just spend all of our waking hours digging through things. And then there's things like this where it's like, well, it didn't take a whole lot of scratching at the surface to get to what actually happened.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't
Try
know.
to deal in reality, folks.
I mean, I try to be compassionate to as many people as possible. I have a lot of compassion for kids who are impacted by this no matter what. I have compassion for the parents who feel like they're just trying to do the best they can for their children. in a very confusing world that is difficult for all of us to navigate amidst a lot of change and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of free-floating anxiety, right? But having said that, you don't get to make a kid's life terrible. You just don't. That should be something that you just don't get to do.
I would say, yeah, we probably need to ask Gade why now. Why did she send that letter now to all the parents? And I'd also, if you get a chance, what was that? One of these people who were talking about a Stillwater librarian using would not give a parents a list of books.
At the legislature during debate.
I don't think anyone's tried to substantiate that at all. So yeah, let's see how that goes.
We need to follow up on that one too.
Oh, a lot of invented problems today.
And don't we have enough real ones? Don't we have enough things that we don't have to work so hard to turn into problems?
All right. I guess that's it. Is that it?
You feel like you're done, Ashland?
Take us out, Ashland.
No.
No?
I was just kidding.
Take us home.
I'm just making fun of Beau because why not?
Why not?
All right.
Why not? Thank you for joining us in the newsroom.
In the Newsroom is edited and produced by me, Chris Peters. You can find all of our past episodes and show notes at studiostillwater.net. This podcast is made possible with support from the Stillwater News Press. Please consider subscribing to our award-winning newspaper and help support local journalism. Go to stwnewspress.com to sign up. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.